Hello, everyone, and welcome to this session, Using Technology to Document and Manage Your Workflow. My name is Heather Satterley, and I'm really pleased to be with you today. Documenting our processes is something that most of us don't love to do in our business, but actually it's one of the most important things that we can do, especially if we're looking to build a team and scale our practice. So during this session, you're going to learn about different types of technology that will help you to make short work of that documentation process. And you'll learn some best practices that you can use with yourself and with your team to make that process a lot easier. So let's go ahead and get started. So our agenda today is we're going to talk about the recipe for success. So what is the recipe for success? We all are running our business, or we're working in a firm, and we want our firms to run smoothly. We want our teams to be working with really wonderful synergy. And we're going to talk about how we can make that happen by documenting processes. Then we're going to dive into learning how to capture the workflow. That's really the hardest part. And I think that's the thing that we struggle with the most as practitioners is the time and labor that it takes to accurately document a process and actually make it easy to follow for our team and for our clients. Finally, we'll talk about different practice management solutions that you can use once you've documented your processes that will help you keep track of the processes and make sure that all of those really important touch points are covered so that your team and you can make sure that you're doing high quality work and being as efficient as possible. Then finally, we'll talk about getting it right. What are some metrics that we can use, and what are the things that we need to look at so that we can make sure that our documentation process is accurate, that it's achieving its function, and make any edits or adjustments as needed. So we're going to be together for just under an hour, and we have a lot to cover. So let's go ahead and dive in. So let's talk about the recipe for success. So a lot of firm owners and sole practitioners have asked me, how do you scale the practice? Especially the sole practitioners that have been working by themselves for a long time. You know what you do in your business. You know what the processes are in your firm and with your clients. And when you start to onboard new team members, it's really hard to effectively communicate what has to be done and what the important things to be looking for are in each of your engagements. So really the recipe for success is following a recipe. So if we see here, this little recipe card, we can see that this is the recipe for making a cake. And when we have recipe cards, what we're writing down is really what are the steps that make that cake taste the same every single time, right? Because that's the goal of a recipe, is that we're able to repeat the process over and over again, and it's always delicious, and it's always the way that we remember, and it's always delighting the people that are eating the food, right, including us. And that's exactly what we're trying to do when we document our processes, is we want to make sure that everything we do is done really well, that we have the quality control baked in to our recipe, and that our team is able to deliver quality and consistency over and over and over again. So that's what we're going to be talking about doing today, is we're going to be building recipes for our accounting firms, but we're going to be doing that using technology and using the processes that we are following ourselves to make sure that we're delivering really high quality services. So there's a really great book out there called The Checklist Manifesto by Atul Gawande. And it's an amazing book, and it talks about why we need checklists to do a great job and to stay on track and make sure that we have quality control in everything that we do. Now, Atul is actually a surgeon. And what he found was that when he was doing surgery with different medical teams, it's really important that they get it right. I'm sure you guys can understand that, right? If you're doing surgery and something doesn't go right and the quality control falls away, well, now you have lives at stake. So in his book, The Checklist Manifesto, he talks about why checklists are so important and why they can be used for just about anything. And so this quote is, "You can't make a recipe for something as complicated as surgery. Instead, you can make a recipe for how to have a team that's prepared for the unexpected." And my good friend, Esther Feinberg-Karp, she turned me on to this book. We were talking about process, and this is so true. In firms, we have things changing around us all the time. We have clients that are doing things. We have to deal with their teams. We have to deal with their customers. We have to deal with regulations from the IRS and other bodies that are telling us, changing rules. We have to deal with things like a pandemic and how to help our clients stay in business. So instead of creating a recipe for something, we really want to create guardrails and a system. So no matter what happens, our team can stay on track and they can be consistently providing quality services to your clients. So that's what we're going to be doing today. Now, some of the key things that Atul Gawande said about these checklists is that you need to identify your killer items. So when we're thinking about process in our industry, which is accounting, we're thinking about things like deadlines. We're thinking about things about penalties. We're thinking about things like materiality, right? Those are the killer things where if we get that wrong, unfortunate things are going to happen, right? And so these also are going to be killer items, which are the steps that we need to do in our business and that our teams need to do as we're completing the work to make sure that if we don't, that we're making sure that we're touching on them, because if we don't, then the end result could be really, really bad for our clients, right? So he also said that we shouldn't make these checklists thorough guides. Like, they don't need to be a book, they don't need to be a novel. They really need to be kept short. 5 to 9 items are ideal. And the reason for that is that as people are reading through instructions and going through their daily work, they have about 1 minute of completely focused time before they start to get distracted. So as we work through the different concepts that we're going to be talking about today during the session, I'm going to be thinking about those kind of rules. We want to keep it short. We want to keep it sweet. It should be user-friendly, meaning that almost anyone can follow it, right? That they're going to understand exactly what you're trying to say, exactly what the steps are going to be, and they're going to be able to follow it really easily. So our keywords and our big takeaways when we're talking about process and documenting processes and creating recipes and roadmaps and to-do checklists is keep it short, make sure we're including the essential steps, and that it is precise, that our wording is really precise. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive in. So why do we document our processes? We just talked a lot about that already. Really, we want to provide guidance and clarity to our team and our clients. I can't tell you how many times throughout my 30+ year career where I've asked a team member for something or I asked a client for something and I got something completely different from what I was asking. It happens more often, I think, with clients than it does with our team members and other trained professionals. But how many times have you asked a client to upload a document that you need or ask them a question and they didn't quite understand what it was that you were asking them, and you ended up having to follow up with that a couple of times before they really understood it? Well, that can be a bit of an art, being really precise with our words, but it's something that's really important. And getting feedback from your team members and your clients is really important to help you start understanding, how to phrase the instructions so that it can be super clear. And also learning what terminology your clients understand and actually using that terminology in your instructions is really important as well. One of the things I love about QuickBooks is that for the accountant-facing product, which is QuickBooks Online Accountant, all the terminology is in words that we understand. We see things like accrual, we see cash, we see banking, we see the words of sales coming in. We see accountantese words, right? But when our clients log into their QuickBooks and they're in the business view, they actually see words that are really that they can understand, that aren't accountantese. And I really love that Intuit does that because they make it good for both of us, right? And it makes it easier for us to work together, right? So using familiarity, using words that whoever's going to be using your checklist can understand is really, really vital. Documenting your processes also maximizes efficiency and consistency, right? So we go back to that recipe card that we saw a couple of minutes ago. We want that cake to taste the exact same way every single time. We want the consistency to be right. We want to delight every single time. And so making sure that we have a checklist, that we have instructions that anyone can follow, that really helps us towards achieving that goal of quality and efficiency and consistency across all the work that we do in our firms. It also bolsters that quality control. Well-placed items in a checklist to say, hey, make sure that you double check the social security number, or make sure that you are, that the bank statement ending balance matches the reconciliation. These are all steps that we put into our processes to make sure that things don't get missed and to ensure the quality of the work that we're delivering to our clients. So having a checklist and then making sure that we're focusing on these really important quality checkpoints, quality control checkpoints is really going to allow you to create something that is going to ensure the quality of the work that you're doing for your clients. Also, documenting your processes is without a doubt the best path to effective automation, right? So we're hearing a lot about automation right now in our industry. We're implementing and utilizing technology that's doing a lot of the busy work that, historically we've had to do ourselves via typing onto a keyboard, right? Or even writing on a piece of paper. Well, if you have documented really good processes, then what you're able to do is look at those processes, analyze them, identify areas where automation can step in and do a really great job of shortening the amount of time that and the amount of manual labor that's necessary to get the job done. So I'm going to tell you, for a long time, I've been in this business for a long time, and it's much harder to run a firm when you haven't documented your processes than it is when you have. When you have them all documented, you can literally take your processes, give them to someone else, and if they're done correctly and well, then they can just follow what the steps are and get the job done without a whole lot of supervision. And it also ensures, that quality control that's so essential to our industry. All right, so let's talk about where we start when we're documenting processes. We want to start with the end goal, right? So what are we trying to accomplish with the process? And we want to start there. And we want to start looking at, what do we have to do to get to that end goal? And what are the things that could cause us to stumble or maybe end up with a situation where the work isn't done exactly the way that we would like or isn't done to compliance? So you're going to start there by looking at the end goal. So an example could be, I want to get my bills paid on time every time, right? So then we want to identify the major steps in that process. So we want to look at, what are the big things that we're doing in order to make that happen? With the accounts payable example, it could be that we say, all right, we get a bill, right? So that's step one, we get the bill, right? If we're working backwards, we could say we pay the bill, but what do we have to do before we pay the bill? We have to receive it, right? So we get the bill. Depending on the size of the organization, well, actually, before we dive into the size of the organization, we get the bill, we record the bill is the next step, right? We go into our accounting system, we record the bill, and then we pay the bill. So we get the bill, we record the bill, and then we pay the bill. So 3 major steps in that process. Now, if we look at that process across multiple organizations, those 3 steps are always going to be the same regardless of the organization. But for a larger organization that's a little more complex, we may have additional steps that we have to add in based on the next thing that we're going to talk about, which is the who, what, when, and why, right? So we want to talk about who is involved in the process, right? What are they doing? Or what are they trying to accomplish? When does it have to be done? And then why are they doing it? Okay. And so in our accounts payable, we've got a bunch of who's, right? We've got the who, which is the vendor who's sending us the bill, right? And they're the who is the vendor, the what is the bill. When are they sending it to us? Usually it's right after they've sent us products or services. And then why are they sending it? Because they want to get paid. Okay. Other who's in this process is the bill has to be entered. Who's entering the bill into QuickBooks, right? What are they entering? They're entering in the date, They're entering in the amount, they're entering in the vendor name, they're also entering in the details about the bill. What did they purchase, right? And then why are they doing it? Because they need to pay it, right? They need to record it in their books, and then they need to pay the bill and send a payment to the vendor. Okay, on the pay side of it, who's paying the bill, right? Who needs to sign the check if you're sending a check, or who needs to approve the bill? Now, these are the things that are going to start to deviate across the different organizations that we work with, right? So we could have an organization where they have a purchasing department. And so a bill comes in, well, we have a who, which is who ordered the stuff, right? We have another who is who approved the stuff, right? So, and then we also have the final, sometimes we have a bunch of different approvers. So we have to think about who is involved in the process. We need to be documenting this, and we need to be answering those 4 questions of who, what, when, and why, right? Then we want to move on, and we want to identify touch points. So the touch points are things like applications. What software are we using? Are we using an AP software like Melio Payments or Bill.com? Are we using QuickBooks? Who is the assignee? Who's actually doing it? Who's the person that's approving the purchase? Who's the person that's entering the bill into the system? Who's the person that's approving the final payment or signing off on the check, right? These are the things that we want to look at. We also want to look at the approval in QC, right? Quality control, that's what QC stands for. Who's doing that? And how do we make sure that what gets put into QuickBooks is what's on that invoice, right? We need to make sure that we have controls in our process that are making sure that nothing's getting missed and that we're putting accurate information into our accounting system. And then finally, after you've identified all of the major steps, you've identified the who, what, when, why, you've identified all the touch points in that situation where you're handing off parts of the process to different people within that process or within the organization, then we're going to fill in the details. What are the details that are specific to this vendor? What are the details that are specific to this particular client? What are the details that are specific to this particular department? And all of that, the number 5, all the details are going to vary by client, and they may vary by process, and they may vary by team. Okay, but now you can see what the major structure is. You're going to start wide, and then you're going to narrow it down. And you want to make sure that you're keeping it very precise, easy to follow, and that you're not making it too overcomplicated so it's slowing people down. And that's where the art part of documenting your processes comes in. And you're going to learn some really, really great technology during our session today that's going to make short work of this for you. So now that you've learned all of the steps about who, what, when, why, how to gather all the information and what the structure of the workflow could be. Now we're going to talk about capturing the workflow, and you're going to learn about some really great technology to help you do that and make short work of this entire process. All right, the first one that we're going to talk about is using video to document the workflow. Okay, so as I say, a picture is worth 1,000 words and a video is worth 10,000 words. Right? So using video to document the workflow allows the viewer to actually watch what's being done. Doesn't get any clearer than that, right? As long as you're doing it very slowly and they can actually follow along, it can be really, really helpful. So when you're documenting the workflow, before you actually start to put together the final checklist for the workflow, you want to go ahead and record somebody doing it. And one way is with the videos. Now, you probably are already using Zoom. If you're on this virtual conference, you're on Zoom right now. So you could record a session with Zoom. Just as you're going through, maybe you're training somebody or you're showing somebody how to do it, or maybe you're on Zoom yourself. As you're doing the work, you could just run Zoom, hit that record button without anyone on the meeting with you, and go through the process and just document it. Just record what you're doing. Talk to yourself. Say, I'm in QuickBooks and I'm recording a bill. Consider using the transcription feature. So Zoom has this built in. They just released it a couple of months ago. It's amazing. It'll try to capture everything you say in typed words, and you can go through and edit it after you've finished recording your session. On the next slide, I'm actually going to show you a screenshot of where you can go to enable that feature within your Zoom settings. And then you can even embed or provide a link to the video in a workflow app or you can just keep a library of it. You know, if you've created a document on how to enter a bill or pay a bill in QuickBooks, you could save that Zoom MP4, create a link in your DMS, your document management system, and share that with clients or with other members of your team, or you can embed it in a workflow app. And we're going to be talking about workflow apps towards the end of this session. So how do you enable transcription in Zoom? Again, if you have Zoom, you have this. You don't have to pay anything additional for it. You're going to go into your Zoom settings. You're going to go into the in-meeting advanced settings, scroll down on the page, and it looks like it's about halfway down the page, and you're going to turn on the closed captioning setting. And then you're going to want to go ahead and check the box to allow live transcription service to transcribe the meeting automatically. And you also want to make sure that you check the box to allow viewing of the full transcript in the in-meeting side panel. What that will do is that'll actually capture what you're saying as you say it right in the Zoom recording. So people will be able to see that transcription. And then you want to also make sure that you toggle the button right here for save captions, because what that's going to do is when you end the Zoom recording, it'll automatically save a text file that you can open up and then use to either, you know, put into your workflow program, edit it, whatever you want to do with it, you'll have that already captured automatically. So when you download the video, and it'll go to the documents folder where all your Zoom videos go, what you'll now see once you've enabled those settings in Zoom is you'll now see this closed caption text document. And you can just open it up and it's going to have all of the text of what you said verbally throughout the session in Zoom. So this is really, really helpful when you're documenting your processes, especially if you have an intern or somebody within your company that is able to go through that and shorten it and make it more precise for you. And then you can put those instructions in either a workflow app or in a document. This is really amazing. We use this in our firm, and it does help us to take notes and to delegate, so that I'm not the one that's actually writing up the processes. I can do the video and then hand it off to somebody else on my team. Other transcription apps that you can get that might have more functionality and more formatting while you're actually doing the transcription are rev.ai or otter.ai. Both of these work with Zoom. You're going to pay for them. I think rev.ai does have a free version where you can get, I think, quite a bit. I think it's something like 500 minutes, somewhere around there, that you can get per month without paying for a subscription. But for most of the really good features, you are going to actually need to pay for that subscription, but it could be very much worth your while to do so. So you can check either one of those out. The next one I'm going to show you, I'm really excited about. So I am actually friends with the team over at ScribeHow. I discovered them earlier this year, and it really has transformed the way that my firm documents processes. What ScribeHow is it's an app that works with your browser, and it captures every click that you make as you're working through a task in a cloud-based application like QuickBooks Online or ProConnect Tax. And it has a ton of different features in here. You can see here that it has different sections. So if your process is complicated, you can break them up into sections. You can add written instruction. You can add tips. You can add heads up. And you can also stop, edit. So and I'm going to show you how this works in a minute. You're probably going, I'm not quite sure. I'm going to show you this. I'm going to actually demo it for you. And then after you capture it, it captures each click and a screenshot of where you clicked as you go through the process. It saves it automatically, and then you can edit it. So let's go take a look at this so you guys can see how magical this particular app is. I think you're going to love it. All right, so I logged into my ScribeHow account, and when you first log in, I land on my dashboard. However, this isn't where I'm actually going to build the scribe. All right, where I'm going to build the scribe is actually in the application where I'm documenting the process. So I've got the QuickBooks Online sample company open right over here in this browser, and I want to show my client how to pay a bill. I want to teach them how to pay a bill. So what I'm able to do is I can come right up here. You'll see this icon right up here in your browser window, right next to the URL window. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to select Start Recording. Okay. And then what I'm going to do, it tells me that it's recording the actions in Chrome. Now I'm ready to go and show the client how to pay the bill. So I'm going to go over and I'm just going to pay a bill just like I normally would. So I'm going to go to New, then I'm going to go to Pay Bills. It's going to pull up all the bills that I need to pay. I'm going to show them that they can check, they can change the bank account or credit card account. And then I'm going to show them that they can select the bills that need to be paid, right? I'm going to print this. So I'm going to check the box to print later. And then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to save and print. Okay. All right. Now, if I come over here and I stop, watch what happens. Look what it did. ScribeHow actually documented all of my processes automatically. So you can see here that it tells me to navigate to QuickBooks QBO.intuit.com. And it goes through and it starts to show screenshots of exactly what I was doing. And it automatically highlights the button that I clicked on. So right here, it's saying, hey, go ahead and click plus new, then select pay bills, then select, and here's really cool. It says click bank, right? That isn't exactly what it says. It says click bank, but actually what I want it to do is I want to change this and say select, select the payment account. And then I'm just going to click on that little check mark so that I can edit it, right? Because that's clearer. Remember, we talked about being concise is extremely important when we're documenting processes. So I'm saying select the payment account right here. Okay, then it says click this checkbox because it's not sure what that checkbox is, right? So I have 1, 2, 3, 4 of those, right? So one of the cool things, and this is a newer feature in ScribeHow, is I can actually merge these together to make them into a little GIF. So I can go ahead and combine the steps. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select those 4 click this check boxes, right? And then I'm going to go ahead and combine the selected and watch what happens. Is it comes up here to the click the checkbox and watch what it does. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change now the words to select the bills you want to pay. I'm going to click on that little button. I'm going to click the print later field, and then I'm going to click save and print down here. Look at that. Can you believe that? How long did that take me to go ahead and document my processes? Maybe, definitely less than 5 minutes. So this is a really cool tool that you can use to document your processes. And then you can take the document that you created and you can either create a copy link, which will create a link so that somebody can just click on the link and go and view your scribe, or you can click share and you can export it as PDF, HTML, Markdown, or Confluence. So those are your options here. So what's wonderful about this is what we normally do is we export as PDF and we attach the PDF to our workflow solution, which I'm going to show you a little bit later. Pretty cool, right? So let's go on back to our PowerPoint and we'll move on to our next slide. So just to recap, the ScribeHow features that you guys just saw is ScribeHow will capture each step as you complete your work automatically. You can edit the steps and include instruction, tips, and placeholders. You can add, edit, delete, and combine steps as we saw, and you can provide a link or download in multiple formats. And there's a free version. And don't forget, you can get 90 days free from ScribeHow to see of the pro features to see how much you like those as well. So really excited to share this tool with you. I think it is a game changer for especially us accountants who have so many processes. All right, the next thing that we're going to talk about today is mapping the workflow visually. So we've documented our steps at the beginning. We just went through, and this is a way where you can go through and actually see what are the steps to do this. Now, ScribeHow is going to help with when you're in application, but it's not going to help you with things like, hey, after I, put the bill in, Joe needs to approve the bill, right? Before it can be paid. It's not going to capture that. How could ScribeHow do that? So creating a flow chart really helps to identify those steps that are outside of the applications and get a whole picture, a full picture of what's happening in the process. So in this example, and you can see here, we have accounts receivable process overview example. This is a accounts receivable process, but you can see what we're doing is we're saying, okay, a purchase is made by a customer. We're going to identify, this is a decision, is it a recurring sale? If it is, then we're going to create an invoice from a template. If it isn't, we're just going to create an invoice. Then we can see that it's going to send the customer the invoice as the next step. Did they pay it on time? Yes. Apply any discounts? No. Assess charges, right? And you can see that each step in the process is looking at what's happening. It's also looking at, is there a decision that needs to be made, meaning that it could go in 2 different directions or sometimes in 3 different directions. We want to capture that as well. And then we have the ability to go through and add notes to it. So you can see that we're putting what are the decisions that are being made. And this is a simple process. You could have a process that's across multiple different, multiple applications. And in that case, you want to add something like a swim line or something like that, just so that you can see the clarity of how the process moves through different applications and how it's affecting different people and different departments. So we're going to do this to help us identify the flow of the information through the process, dependencies, what needs to happen before something else can happen. Is there an approval needed? Touch points, either for quality control, or do we need information from somewhere else or someone else before we can continue on with the process? And it also will help us to see inefficiencies, right? A lot of times when I'm going through this exercise with a client and we're documenting the existing process, those inefficiencies just jump out at you, right? I'm entering the information into QuickBooks Online. I'm also entering the information into Salesforce. Red bell goes off to say, hey, can we do an integration so that they're only entering the information into one place? So as you're documenting through the process, you're looking for places that you can actually streamline them, reduce data entry, reduce steps, and make it a more effective workflow. All right, so workflow mapping apps that you can use, the one that I use in my firm is Lucidchart. But any of these are fantastic. SmartDraw and Miro and Lucidchart are all cloud-based. Visio, I believe, has a cloud-based option, but that's the Microsoft version of a workflow mapping app. There is a learning curve, not going to lie, as you're starting to use these. There is a learning curve to learn what the different shapes mean, to learn how to work within the application, just like any other application you might use. But the good news is that all of these have templates that you can start from. So this one that I just showed you on the previous slide right here, this accounts receivable mapping one, this is a Lucidchart template. It's already created by another user. And this is a fantastic place for me to start because I can start with this template and then add in any of the things that might be different for my particular workflow. So all of them have the ability to use a template. So take a look at any of those. They're pretty awesome. I love using them. And the other thing about using these workflow mapping apps is that they make you look really professional. So if you're doing any kind of process work with your clients, when you present a mapped workflow in a flow chart, it looks really good. It really does. It looks really professional. And it, you definitely are talking about high-end service there. All right, putting it all together. So we've learned that we can use Scribe How. We've learned what we need to document. We've now learned that we can use video to document. We can use Scribe How to document. And then we can use these workflow mapping apps to go through and create flowcharts to analyze and streamline processes. Now we need to pull it all together into a workflow app so that we can train our team and other people to go through and follow the instructions that we've created and actually complete the process. So let's talk about that. So the first thing that we're going to think about is structuring our work, right? So when we're structuring our work, and when I'm talking about work, I'm talking about a particular process, right? I'm calling it work because every process that we do in an accounting firm is work. That's what we do, right? So we're going to start with groups or sections, right? And our groups or sections are typically defined by internal touch points, assignees, or external touch points, meaning who's doing the work is going to be a section, right? And they're going to follow all, finish all of the tasks in that particular section for them. And then we'd have another group if it moved on to another person in the firm. An example of that could be tax work, right? So if we have an admin that's gathering all of the tax documents from our clients, we're going to have a group that says gather tax documents, and we're going to assign it to that individual that's in charge of gathering the tax documents. Then it moves on to the preparation, which is typically the staff accountant or the tax preparer. That's going to be a second group, and we're going to have all of the tasks related to preparing a tax return. Then it's going to move on to the reviewer, right? Which is the next group. So it's going to move on. So when we're talking about groups and sections, we're talking about looking at, is it an internal touch point, an external touch point, meaning maybe we have to move to a different application. Maybe we have to reach out to a client. Is it the assignee that we're changing the assignee of who's actually working on the engagement? Then we have our tasks and subtasks. So we have our task, which is the major task, which is the thing that they're thinking, this is what I have to do. So remember, we broke it down into 3 tasks for the accounts payable. Receive the bill, right? Enter the bill, pay the bill. So those might be major tasks, but then we could have subtasks under those major tasks, like go to Plus New, enter bill, enter in the vendor information, the account information, other things like that. And then we can have additional details, which could be things, like our scribes or details specific to a particular client. Okay, so these are the things that you're going to want to be thinking about as you're structuring your work items or your workflow tasks in whatever application that you end up using. So this is Intuit Practice Management, which is a relatively new Intuit offering. It was released back in 2020, early 2020. What it is it's, if you've ever heard of Carbon workflow, it is Carbon, it's powered by Carbon, but it's an Intuit offering, and it integrates very deeply with QuickBooks Online, QuickBooks Time, and ProConnect Tax Online or Lacert Tax. So if you look at this example in Intuit Practice Management, you can see that these are the major sections. Engage client for 1099 work. This is a 1099 template. Engage client for 1099 work, step 1. Engage client for 1099 work, step 2. What do you think maybe happened here? I bet that either this was one individual's handling all the things in this section, or somebody else was handling all the tasks in this section. Set up track 1099. Then we have a client task. They need to review something. Remember those all important quality control checks. We're going to set it up. Then we're going to say, hey, we've compiled this list of 1099 recipients. We need you to go look at them and say they're right. That's on them. We want the client to verify that. Then we're going to send the W-9 request in Track 1099 to all of the vendors. Then we're going to prepare them. Then we're going to review them. Then we're going to process them. And then we're going to send them to the client through a client task. And then finally, we're going to have a follow-up, right? So you can see here that each of these sections are based on touch points or changes between who's doing the tasks, an application, or a quality control touch point where we need somebody to actually review something and say, hey, this is correct. It's okay to move forward at this point, okay? Then details can be added in the description. So you can see here in our first one, set up track 1099, there's 3 tasks. So the tasks are the individual steps that must be followed in order to complete that section, right? So in this case, we have to set up a new client in track 1099. We have to run the 1099 wizard in QuickBooks, and we have to generate and email the 1099 recipient list to the client. So one person, the bookkeeper right here, that's the person that's doing all these things. They're going to go through each step and check off the step as they complete it. Inside each task, we could have subtasks or we can have a description. And here we have a description that says, hey, go set up a new client in track 1099. Here's a link. If a client already exists, mark this task as complete. You don't have to do anything, okay? And then when they're done, they can check it off. Then the details are added in the description. So you can add descriptions and links or attachments. You can add those videos we talked about. We can add scribes, and you can see here that we have a scribe in our work item and Intuit Practice Management that shows visually exactly what they need to do to complete the task. Talk about efficiency and talk about clarity, right? Anybody on my team sees exactly what they need to do to complete the task, right? Anybody can do it. because we've got it written and it's detailed and it's super clear. And then you also want to put in any quality control checklists, right? So sometimes we'll have bulleted lists in these descriptions that say, did you check the social security number? Did you verify the name? Did you verify the address, right? Little things that we want them to do before they move on to the next task. All right, practice management solutions. Let's talk about some practice management solutions. And the two that we're going to talk about, there's a bunch of them out there, but we're going to focus on the two Intuit practice management solutions, which are Intuit Practice Management and Work inside QuickBooks Online Accountant. So selecting a workflow solution, there are accountant-specific solutions. There's QuickBooks Online Accountant. There's Intuit Practice Management, which I just showed you a little bit about that. We also have Carbon, which is Intuit Practice Management and Carbon are essentially the same thing, but Intuit Practice Management has that deep integration with the tax software that Carbon does not. We also have Jetpack Workflow, Arrow Workflow, and Canopy Tax are just a few that you can look at if you're looking for an accountant-only solution or accountant-specific workflow solution. There's also solutions out there that are not accountant-specific, but actually work really, really well for accounting firms. And some of those are Asana, Monday.com, Process Street, ClickUp, Trello, and there's so many more. There's so many out there that you can look at. I encourage you to go out and Google workflow, or it would actually be under project management apps, and find what appeals to you and your team. Every team works a little bit differently. And the important thing that you're going to want to look at is it easy to use? Does it offer all the features that you want? Does it integrate with other systems that you're using so that you can ensure that efficiency? And is it within your price budget, right? So those are the things that you're going to be looking for. So QuickBooks Online Accountant Work, this is right inside your QuickBooks Online Accountant. So if you are signed up if you're signed up for QuickBooks Online Accountant, then you get this automatically. And it has 4 built-in templates that you can start using immediately, or you can create your own templates and then you can assign them to your clients and to your team. So let's jump in and let's do a little bit of a demo of what the QuickBooks Online Accountant Work looks like, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about some of those features. So I'm in QuickBooks Online Accountant and I clicked on the Work tab over here in the left nav bar. And you can see this is the Work tab. You may not have ever seen it or gone into it, but it is practice management, project management for your firm. So you can see that I have different tasks that are organized by due date. So today, this week, the next 30 days. It allows me to view what has to be done. I can either filter by project, which means the engagement, right? Our project is considering that's the engagement that we're doing. Or if I wanted to see what tasks within the engagement or within the project are assigned to me, then I can go ahead and select that as well. So these are all the tasks. I have a lot to do. This is just a sample company. I can also create client requests. So remember we talked about those external touch points. Well, you can set up a task for that and then send a client request to all your clients that use QuickBooks Online. And then they're able to respond to the requests and even upload documents that you can then access through QuickBooks Online Accountant. So this is really great. It's totally, if you're using QuickBooks Online Accountant, you already have it. You just have to start using it. The other thing that's really cool is that you get these templates. So within QuickBooks Online Accountant Work tab, you get these 4 templates that already have the tasks set up for you. You can change them. So if they don't work for the workflow in your firm, you can go through and edit them, or you can use what the recommended workflow is from Intuit. So you can create a project from a template. You can go through and duplicate an existing template and then edit it to match your workflow. And then once you do that, you're going to find your custom templates that are right up here in the top section. Okay, so that is the work. And just to show you how you can create a brand new template from scratch is you can create the template, give it a name, and then start adding tasks to it. And I know somebody is thinking this question in their head, can I create tasks and projects for non-QuickBooks Online clients? Yeah, you sure can. The only thing you can't do for a non-QuickBooks Online client is you can't send them a client request. Okay, but you can definitely track the work. All right, let's head on over back to our PowerPoint. All right, so you guys have learned a ton of new technology that can help you to document your processes. So some of the key takeaways that we learned in this session is that documenting processes up front takes a lot of time. It's hard. That's why a lot of us don't do it, right? But the investment, as you've seen today, is priceless. It's going to make your firm more efficient. You're going to have fewer errors in your workflow, and your team is going to have better communication of what they're supposed to be doing. And you're going to have better oversight and insight into how your team is performing as well. When they're using these workflow apps, especially Intuit Practice Management, you actually have an insights area where you can see how they're performing based on the budgets that you set for your engagements and based on the time that they're tracking against them. So you can start to gauge how efficient are we. So there's lots and lots of great features there to help you gauge how you're doing. As you go through and you start to work with your processes, you're going to have to tweak them. I've seen lots of firms that start documenting processes and they kind of go overboard and there's too many tasks and it becomes a real drain on the team, right? They have so many tasks in their to-do list that they get a little overwhelmed. That's okay. You're going to start, I would say start big and then go narrow, right? So document, create your tasks in the big ones, receive bill, enter bill, pay bill, and then start filling in the detail as needed within your firm based on the individuals, the quality control, and what you're learning as you're documenting your processes. Make sure that you start with the end goal in mind. What is it that you're trying to accomplish, and work backwards from there. Use technology to record the steps in the process so that you can correctly analyze it as you're building them out. So video is a great resource. The transcription that's in the video and scribe how, as we talked about. Analyze those processes. So once you've documented, analyze them. You're going to find so much found time when you analyze your processes and find that there's duplication of entry, or maybe there's an integration you didn't know about. Taking the time to do that overall is just going to save your team so much time and frustration. It's kind of magical. And have your team also help you with documenting the processes. If you're working in a firm, having the people that actually do the work document the process is the best way to do it. Don't do it for them, delegate them, give them the tools and have them do it, because they're the ones that know the ins and outs of that process. And you'll learn a lot from having them do it. And they'll learn a lot from having them do it. And then use project or practice management apps to house your processes so that you have those recipe cards and that your cake tastes the same every time. And it's delighting the people that eat it every single time, right? All right, everybody, that's it for our session today. Thanks so much for joining me.